Hey guys, Loco here. I'm sure you've been looking forward to this. Let's go over TSM's 2020 roster. So, TSM's 2020 roster will be Broken Blade up in top lane, StarDoc in jungle, Bjergsen in mid lane, Kabe in AD carry, and Biofrost for support. And also, Peter Zhang for coach. This one's actually important. Man, what a roster. For certain TSM fans, this was a dream roster. Getting StarDoc, getting Kabe, getting Biofrost back, they love it. But I think this roster isn't clean cut as it seems, and there are a lot of volatile pieces. And yeah, let's break down all the new additions and kind of what they're going to be struggling with going into 2020. First up, let's start with StarDoc. This is by far the biggest move. The prophecy of TSM StarDoc finally came true. It's been an idea that's been existing and living within TSM's head, StarDoc's head since 2015. Ever since we've had problems with StarDoc on TL, one of his comments was always, I'm just gonna go play for TSM. I'm just gonna go boost. Josh has always really respected Bjergsen as a player and has wanted to play in the black and white org. So TSM, I also think, has always respected StarDoc's skill. They gave him a tryout in 2015, but because they had Svenskeren at the time, they didn't feel like it was worth risking blowing up the roster just for StarDoc, especially since that was StarDoc's rookie split in 2015 spring, and that's the only little taste we got of him. And now a lot has happened since then. TSM enjoyed their third era of dominance with Bjergsen and Doublelift as their core. They were unbeatable, but right after Doublelift left, things did not go so well. Sven plus Mitty was not the best in the West like we expected them to be. Their jungle situation was a shithole. Svenskeren, Mike Young, Grig, Acadian, Grig again, Spica, missing Worlds in the last 2 years, and they had never missed Worlds before that. As for StarDoc, he went through 6 different teams, and I think EchoFox was the only one that you could even call remotely successful. And sadly enough, he spent the last year in academy. So the team that can't keep a jungler, the jungler that can't keep a team, finally together. I actually think it's a really good fit for each other for right now. I think TSM needed to find a solution to their jungle situation, someone that's experienced, someone that was going to have a strong voice, and StarDoc needed a top tier team to give him a chance again to prove that he is one of the best players in North America. But yeah, this is not going to be an easy upbringing at all, and we'll talk about all the problems they might run into towards the end of the video. Let's move on to the bot lane really quickly. For new bot lane, they have Kabe from Splice and Biofrost back from CLG. Kabe is a better Sven, just straight up. It might be a crazy statement 2 years ago, but today I think most would agree if you had to pick an import bot lane, you would pick Kabe over Sven. They're both Danish players with relatively quiet laning that's a beast in teamfight. Although Kabe does bring a slightly different flair than Sven, where Sven was a little bit more utility heavy. His core champions were stuff like Ezreal, Kalista. Kabe is a bigger carry in teamfights, such as his Zaya play or his Kai'Sa play. I mean, the whole Splice's deal was let's get to 35 minutes where Kabe has 3 items and then we'll start winning teamfights. And they made it to Worlds in EU, a relatively strong region, playing that playstyle. As for Bio, I think he's a welcome addition. While I love Smoothie, he does have a tendency to over-communicate and is not the strongest mechanical player when it comes to playing range support. And also, StarDoc likes being the leader and making his own calls, and having a support that will follow up, something that's been more Biofrost's style, would make StarDoc's inclusion into the team much easier. Also, the same thing for Bio regarding him being the shot caller. He wasn't the best shot caller at CLG, and they didn't have their best results until they started dividing up the shot calling roles and upgraded their roster. That's when they started showing signs of life. So I actually think this addition of Biofrost makes so much more sense when you also talk about and think about StarDoc coming into the mix. As a bot lane duo overall though, I don't think these two will be standouts, but it's going to be more so important the kind of roles they'll play within the teams, and that's where they're going to contribute heavily. As we talked about with Bio, his synergy with StarDoc going to be very important, and also synergy with Bjerg. It's very core part of the game right now. The mid lane 3v3, getting that control support, recalling, and his first recall going to mid lane instead of going straight to bot lane. So how he works with StarDoc and Bjerg will matter so much in terms of how well he's going to be able to contribute to the team. As for Kabe, I think the thing that TSM's really banking on is him being a giga carry in teamfights. He was that player at EU and even at Worlds, so I think that's a role that he'll be able to knock out of the park. Not much to say about Bjergsen, now a part owner and probably a forever TSM player. He will continue being the best mid laner. 2019 was not his hottest year, but the constant jungle changes definitely didn't help his case. And if you take his proven domestic dominance, I think it suggests last year was an anomaly, not a sign of his decline. For Broken Blade, this is where things are a little bit more up in the air. He had a phenomenal spring in playoffs. If TSM won that finals, I'm pretty sure Broken Blade would have been voted MVP, but it was followed up by a rather disappointing summer. A really common trap that most imports fall into is they have a fantastic first split, followed up by a continued declining of play. And yeah, I think Broken Blade might fall into that trap. He really needs to find his footing again for 2020. He's a young player with a lot of talent, and he has a great role model in Bjergsen to look up to. Also, you're eating up an import slot on a top tier team like TSM. I know TSM isn't top tier elsewhere but NA, but let me get away with saying they're top tier. Like, you are going to need to prove your worth, Broken Blade, for you to really flourish and be a franchise player along with Bjergsen in the future. Now, finally, the coach role, Peter. I think the rumors of to TSM was ridiculous. What I can confirm for you guys is TSM did look at Eastern coaches, but coaches in China make way too much for NA teams to really compete in terms of salary. For example, the best coaches in China make $500,000 post-tax. This is after they are taxed, and some make even more than that. The best coaches in NA, maybe they make $400,000, and even if they did, it would be pre-tax. It just makes no sense for someone to come over from China to NA, especially if they have like drive regarding being, I want to coach the best teams, or the only thing that TSM could really offer is like a lifestyle change in North America. Like, he has to really want to live here for him to make that decision. I think Peter is a charismatic young players coach. Players just love working with Peter. Any kind of player you ask, okay, maybe don't ask Phoenix or Piglet, but generally most players love working with Peter. He's all about what the players want and really enabling them, especially junglers. Acadian and Spica have both spoken up so much about how much he has helped their game, and luckily for him, the biggest struggle laid out in front of him is the jungler. I don't think Peter has an easy job in front of him though, and I'm not even sure if Peter has the experience or the personality management skills to handle it, but let's see how 2020 plays out before we behead another TSM coach. So, how is this roster going to do? I think the projection for this roster is very varied, and it's really hard to have a strong statement in terms of they'll be good, they'll be bad. They have the firepower to challenge TL, but also there's no guarantee the pieces click together and we could have another year of disappointment for the most decorated team in LCS. So, let's actually just talk about the issues they need to tackle. First up is topside synergy. With the current patch, bot side seems to be the more important, especially with like the Dragon Soul, but there is no guarantee that remains so going into Season 10. And also, Kabe plus Biofrost aren't the strongest laner, so it doesn't make the most sense to play towards them either. I think StarDoc and Broken Blade are the two players that are the least proven on this roster, and how they work together and kind of the level of play they'll bring is going to be so crucial. Broken Blade and StarDoc, if they are not top tier players, this team will not have a strong side lane that they can play towards. And yeah, we're going to default back to play around Bjergsen again. And that just cannot be TSM's identity going into 2020. Also, another big one is mid-game macro. TSM swapped out their jungle plus support this year, and for a lot of teams, jungle plus support is the backbone of any team's macro. Jungle support is the most fluid role on the map. You move around the most and you move together, and you have huge impact on how that game is going to play out, depending on the actions you take and the decisions you make. Bjergsen hasn't really found success in recent times as a shot caller, and having a single shot caller is such an outdated way of playing the game. StarDoc and Biofrost, they're going to need to do a lot of heavy lifting for this team to have a strong macro beyond what I talked about last time, just play around mid lane. Now, the final big issue that they're going to need to tackle is dealing with losses. Problems rarely arise when you're winning. It's when you're losing that teams tend to fall apart, and a roster with StarDoc always has to keep this in mind. TSM talked about having a sports psych, but that isn't a magic solution to team dynamic, and Peter is a young coach that hasn't really been a head coach since 2014. The pressure's on for TSM. They are slowly relinquishing their title as the most winning team in LCS to Team Liquid. Team Liquid is at 4, TSM is at 6. They could get overtaken this year. This team, for them to really prove their worth, it's going to be about how they deal with losses, how they deal with disagreement. And I honestly don't think it's going to be easy for them. I think more likely than not, they will fail regarding this part of running a team. Like, this team has so much pressure and so much volatile pieces. I don't know, there's always a small part of me that always believes and trusts that TSM will do well. I've been pretty disappointed the last 2 years, but yeah, call me a fool, but I'm going to believe in them one last time. The magic of TSM, please just make it happen. So yeah, that's kind of my final thoughts on TSM in 2020. I hope you guys enjoyed this first look at the 2020 TSM roster. Don't forget to leave a comment, like, subscribe. Oh, and I did say leave a comment, so do that. Like, subscribe, leave a comment. And remember, I'm not crazy, I'm just loco. Bye!